Hi, everyone. Jack Kirne, who is the branch organiser for the NTEU Deakin branch, and I, Piper Rodd, who's the branch president of the Deakin branch and an academic at Deakin, are here today to provide our perspective on management's communications that have implored you to vote to endorse their proposed EA. Management has written to you this morning to say that if you vote no to this ballot, you might receive none of the benefits offered to date. We would argue that this is a thinly veiled threat, and it's designed to frighten us as Deakin workers into doing what they want on their terms and on their schedule. To be clear, this sort of language is not commensurate with good faith bargaining. The union's advice is that retracting the few allowances offered so far would be highly unusual, and indeed it would be deeply problematic. Revoking these meager offerings would be significantly counterproductive for Deakin management, further diminishing their public standing and image, entrenching the current distrust and discontent that many Deakin staff are currently feeling. Where these ballots have been voted down elsewhere, for instance, Curtin, Uni, Griffith, Newcastle, management has really quickly returned to the bargaining table and been forced to make swift and significant concessions that have improved working conditions and achieved higher rates of pay. Not a single initially promised improvement was revoked. To be clear, it's not only disingenuous to suggest that what's been offered so far will be taken away, it's also really concerning. It signals a disturbing disregard and a disrespect for the voice of its workforce. These are the things that we've been asked a bunch of questions, and we thought today that we'd do a little bit of myth busting. These are the things that members and non-members have reached out to us in the last week to seek clarification on. Jack, what's the biggest question that we've been asked so far?
I think the one that keeps coming up is that the university says it's offering a 3% per annum pay rise. And we've been saying over and over again that the pay rise is actually only 2.85%. So I was wondering if you could explain the difference.
I'll try my best. So basically, the span of the years that the pay rise will cover runs for at least 5 years. And by that, I mean that the end of our old agreement was 2020. The new agreement will take us up to at least 2025. If you add up the administrative pay rises offered to date, which total 5.25%, with the 9% promised over the next 3 years, and you divide that by 5%, you don't reach a total of 3%. It actually amounts to 2.85%. I know it sounds a bit tricky, but it is an important thing to contextualize that amongst what has been negotiated already in union agreements across the country at many other universities. The average rate that is being achieved to date is 3.5% per annum, averaged. The difference in pay means that by the end of the agreement in 2025, Deakin staff will effectively earn thousands of dollars less when compared to our colleagues at universities such as ACU, Western Sydney University, Queensland University, and Sydney University.
Thanks.
The next question we have regards what the agreement is offering in relation to workers' rights to work at home and have flexible work arrangements.
Yeah, this has been a really big one, and it's one that I've been talking to particularly professional staff about when I've been on the phone. So the key thing is that the Deakin enterprise, that the agreement that Deakin has put forward to staff offers nothing in terms of an enshrined right to work from home. Management has said in multiple meetings, Ian Martin said in the town halls last week, that they think the best solution is for a worker to negotiate with their immediate line manager the ability to work from home. Now, In bargaining, what we've asked for is an enforceable clause that enshrines the right to work from home where it's reasonable to do so, as well as, of course, the right to disconnect from work outside of working hours. Both these claims have been resoundingly rejected as impractical by management. So effectively what this means is that management could direct staff to pre-pandemic work settings, and there would be nothing that we could do as a union or a staff to resist against that. I think it's worth noting that our claim is not unreasonable by any regards. Where we've reached agreement at other universities, we've already won enhanced and enforceable working from home rights. So again, that's at places like Australian Catholic University, Western Sydney University, and the University of Technology of Sydney. I guess the big academic one, of course, that we always get is what's the university proposing to do about workloads?
Yeah, workloads are, of course, a really big issue for many of our academic colleagues across the university. In essence, the current offer that the university has made provides nothing that would actually fix the key issue that sits at the heart of the academic workload model. To redress the gap between the estimated time that it takes to do tasks, write a lecture, do marking, and the time it actually takes to do them often. Their proposal to redress the broken workload model is to reduce the hours in the model by a really measly 30 hours per year, and then set an agenda item at faculty board to discuss the workload models. This will not provide any new rights for individuals or collectives to redress models when they're broken. In fact, it does nothing to give workers more of a say than they currently have, which is very little, into what we would argue is a pretty broken model that many people find overwhelming in terms of what is expected of them, and that doesn't acknowledge the actual work that people put in. So the NTEU's proposal is instead to create academic workload model committees of democratically elected staff that in each faculty would conduct a yearly review of the model. These committees would have what we call determinative power to ensure that work allocations are reasonable and that the model incorporates the work that academic staff actually do, and fairly takes into account the needs of the workers in each of our schools and faculties across the university. Another question that we've had many people reach out and ask us about has to do with what the proposed EA is actually going to do to help casual and fixed term staff.
Yeah, and the answer is nothing. There is no targets to reduce casual or precarious employment. It actually expands the circumstances in which Deakin can use fixed term instead of ongoing appointments, and introduces an unlimited number of part-year fixed term teaching focused jobs, which could be used to replace existing academic staff. It's also worth noting that these positions exist in other universities. They were won in the last round of bargaining at both Melbourne and Monash. At those institutions now, the campaign is to get rid of them. And that's because the staff who are working in those jobs are earning less money, they're working more hours, and they're no less secure. So in this round of bargaining, the NTEU's negotiated enterprise agreements that have secured enforceable targets to decasualize the university through the creation of new full-time teaching and research roles. And that's exactly what we're asking for here. The other thing that we've asked for is for a limit to the use of fixed-term contracts. And sure, we believe that if someone's on a fixed-term contract and the role still needs to be performed after the end of the contract, that person should be converted into an ongoing role. And again, these are not unreasonable asks. So one of the key things that really does keep coming up, and we've sort of already addressed it a little bit, but I think it's really to stress it, is this question of what's going to happen if staff don't know. Are we going to lose the public holidays and the proposed pay rise? And what will be the timeline for negotiating an agreement that's actually worth our time?
Yeah. What we would say to that is that bargaining in good faith means simply that management and the union work together to reach an agreement. The NTEU would never seek to achieve an agreement that leaves any worker worse off. What Deakin is presently proposing doesn't achieve any real improvements in rights, workloads, or improved conditions for academics, professional staff, and definitely not for casuals. We fully support the introduction of any and all additional leave arrangements, but we're also committed to ensuring that there's a genuine reduction in workload to accommodate any additional leave. Despite management's implied threat to retract the offer of 3 additional public holidays, we would argue that that's essentially an empty threat made to scare people into voting something that is wholly inadequate. An employer relies, for instance, on its reputation as a good workplace, trusted amongst its staff and its customers. In this case, it's students. Were Deakin to revoke the offers made to date, this would give them a pretty bad reputation, where people would have reasonable cause to think that its workers are being treated pretty badly. Again, I note that doing so would be virtually unprecedented. Your vote, remember, is anonymous, but it's really, really important. By voting no, you'll ensure only that management gets the message that their workers deserve to be listened to, and we deserve a seat at the table. Your ideas for what could make Deakin a better place to work every day should shape the enforceable agreement that determines all of our working conditions for the next 3 years. By voting no to this inadequate agreement, management will only be forced back to the table and to listen to its workers. Thank you.
Thank you.